Hi there, my name is Seth Davies. I'm Executive Vice President of Competitive Solutions. I'm coming to you today from Atlanta, Georgia, and I want to welcome you to the virtual portion of the HR Florida Conference. And I want to thank you for selecting my session, HR Metrics, Making Metrics Matter in Your Organization. It's my hope that over the next 50 to 55 minutes that I share with you some meaningful tactical ways to implement metrics into your department, into your organization to help move the business forward. I want to open up my presentation to share with you a HR scorecard from a consumer products company. Specifically, this organization is in what's called the convenience foods business. Some of you may have actually had their product for breakfast or a snack today. And I want you to look at this scorecard. It has got, in my opinion, it's a very meaningful and robust scorecard for this department, this organization. Look at the areas they're measuring. They're measuring employee compensation, retention, employee hiring, productivity, satisfaction, and training and development. And it took this department about 6 months before they landed on the metrics that you see on this scorecard. Its scorecard went through 4 revisions. And on average, a scorecard will go through 5 revisions before it becomes a meaningful scorecard. And I want to tell you right out of the gate, there'll never be a perfect scorecard. Scorecards are living, breathing documents. They need to go through changes, that need to go through revisions. Another word of caution, and by the way, it'd be real easy for me at this point just to conclude my presentation, say, look, if you're looking for HR metrics in your organization, take this scorecard and go utilize it. But I've been doing this for over 25 years, and I know that if I were to call several of you over the next 60, 90, 120 days and ask you the question, hey, remember that scorecard that I shared with you? Tell me how it's working out for you. Tell me how your department is managing and utilizing it. And here are the responses I probably would hear. Well, as we looked at it, we didn't have any data to go against what the metrics and the goals were on there, so it just didn't work for us. Or it really didn't speak to exactly what our department does. I mean, we don't handle training and development, and then the employee satisfaction, that comes from our corporate office, so we just don't use it. Or we tried it out for a couple months and it just felt clunky and it just really didn't fit into exactly what we do, so we don't use it anymore. See, ladies and gentlemen, for your metrics to matter in your department, in your organization, those metrics need to be developed and deployed by you and your staff. I want the ownership. I want the DNA of your team in that scorecard. I want the team to be able to say, this is our scorecard. I don't want metrics, scorecards developed by someone in finance or a business analyst in the corporate office of your organization, because it will never be your scorecard. It'll always be somebody else's scorecard. So my message to you today around making metrics matter, we're going to talk about how to build robust scorecards. I'm going to share with you later on some HR metric examples I think are worthy of consideration as you look to refine or to build scorecards. But I'm also going to share with you a system and a process to make scorecards sustainable, embed them in your organization, and become a way of work. Because absence of a process, you can have the nicest looking scorecard, nicest charts, graphs, dashboards, what have you. But if you don't have a system or process to measure, to talk about it, to engage your team, your workforce, you're just wasting your time. A little bit about my firm. I mentioned earlier I'm from Atlanta. Our corporate office is in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 4 business units at Competitive Solutions. And I'm going to speak to you primarily on the organizational engagement piece, process-based leadership. We also have in the top right there Leadership GPS. We do a lot of leadership training for organizations, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 day programs. We do executive coaching. Last year we had a group of 10 folks from a biotech company out in San Francisco. These 10 folks were very strong technically, had a scientific background, but they lacked the leadership skills, the interpersonal skills to be effective leaders. And so they went through our 8-month Leadership GPS boot camp. Very successful program. Bottom left there, you'll see operational excellence. We do lean events for organizations. And then the bottom right there, Visuant. Visuant is our business performance software. You'll see screenshots of Visuant. My presentation consolidates all your data from your different locations, takes data from your HR system, your quality, your financial system, production system, customer service, brings in all one location. But the differentiator with Visuant is the ability to link corrective actions to underperforming metrics. I want to just share with you this slide, and the reason that I show it to you is I want to illustrate that it doesn't matter if you're the world's largest manufacturer, such as 3M, you're a nonprofit such as Goodwill, you're a biotech pharmaceutical company making life-saving drugs, if you're a charter school system such as Brain Nation you see on there, or a government entity like Manatee County Tax Collector down there, Ken Burton Jr., he and his staff, they've got very meaningful scorecards down in the Manatee, Sarasota, Bradenton area that connects their people to the business. It doesn't matter what type of organization you are. Every organization has got some form of data, some form of metrics, and I've yet in my 25 years to meet an organization that says we don't need to measure, we don't need to connect our people to the business. I want to transition now, and I want to ask for some of you maybe a provocative question, a question you don't necessarily know the answer to, and that's okay. That's why we're here today, so we can answer that question. But I would also challenge you as at the conclusion of this presentation, if you're in your office, walk around and ask some people, hey, how would you respond to this question, or send an email out at your next meeting, ask your staff this question. At this moment in time, your business, your team, are you winning? Are you losing? If people can't answer that question factually with data, then metrics don't matter in your organization. And prior to the pandemic, when my team and I, when we'd go into organizations, we would ask this question of senior leaders, middle managers, folks down on the shop floor, frontline people, customer service representatives. We would ask this question of them. Let me share with you responses that I typically would hear to this question. One would be this: well, our HR department just sent out the new benefits package for the upcoming year, and our prescription drug plan, our co-pays are going to go up, visits to the doctor are going to go up, so we must be what? Losing. Another one I hear is, well, I've worked more overtime this year than I did all of last year, so we must be winning. Well, for the employee perspective, hey, they're winning because they're working overtime, they're getting more money in their bank account, right? But many times that's indicative that the business is losing if we're having to work a lot of overtime. My favorite one is this. Well, Sarah's my boss, and when things are bad, when we're losing, you can't get rid of Sarah. And today is Thursday, and I've seen Sarah one time, so we must be what? Winning. Okay? That's the frame of reference that employees, that people come from when it comes to asking this question: are you winning? Are you losing? Metrics today, performance today, what drives that many organizations? I just want to see if my illustration on this slide and the one after kind of resonates with you as I lay the groundwork, the foundation for the rest of my presentation. Many organizations today, performance is powered by the 3 Ps. And you see the 3 Ps on there of proximity, persuasion, and position. And I'll be the first to tell you, the 3 Ps will get you business results, but they're not sustainable, okay? Not sustainable. Let me give you an example of the 3 Ps and how I see them manifest in your organization. Persuasion. I meet a lot of leaders that are very dynamic, great communicators that can stand up, give very passionate speeches about what a great place this is to work, how everyone's a valued contributor. Last fall, I was in an organization, it was a Friday afternoon, entire group of 300 employees. We're in the cafeteria. The president of the organization was up at a podium talking about how great this place was. People left there feeling good. They felt valued contributor to the organization. But then when they came in Monday morning, nothing had really changed, okay? John was still in a bad mood. He still required 2 cups of coffee before you could engage, before you could talk with him. Sherry was a person that you really on a Monday shouldn't go interface with Sherry, talk to Sherry until after lunch. You got to give her time to settle in and kind of get her day going. It's not sustainable. It's fleeting. It's short term. Proximity. The physical presence of the leader driving performance. And last year I took a tour of a manufacturing site. Okay, I was with senior vice president flying in from the corporate office. We toured the site, met with people, went out to the production floor. Everyone was working hard. And I later learned that in our 4 hours that we were at that site, there was more productivity in those 4 hours than in a typical 8-hour day. Why? What was driving performance? It was the proximity of that senior vice president. He was there. People were heads down working hard. Have you ever been walking the halls of your organization? You see people standing around chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden they see a senior leader come and they dive into their cubicles, or their meetings all of a sudden break up, right? Proximity drives performance. And let's be honest, as leaders, we don't have the ability to spend all of our time together with our employees. You know, prior to the to the pandemic, right? Focus, urgency, and accountability, was it the same as if you were physically with your workforce, or did the decline drop off when you left? And I know I read an article in the Wall Street Journal recently. Once the pandemic hit, people started working from home. Productivity actually went up for many organizations. Why? People were scared. People were nervous that they were going to lose their jobs, so they wanted to put their best foot forward. They were logging on to email in the network early in the morning. They were logging off at the end of the day. Showed a lot of productivity. But then as May, June came around, that productivity started to decline, okay? Because people aren't physically in groups anymore to see who's doing what, who's engaged. Later on in my presentation, I'm going to share with you, how do we measure the level of engagement? How do I have meaningful, productive, performance-based discussions, okay? Metrics and accountability will help us do that. And then the last P you'll see on there, position. Positional authority. Let me see if this resonates with you, okay? If this happens in your organization. Let's say, for instance, my colleague Will, we work side by side. We've worked together for 5 years. For whatever reason, I don't know why, Will doesn't like me. So if I was to send him an email asking him to do a task, what's he more than likely going to do? Probably, one, ignore it. He may actually even just delete my email. He'd see who's it come from and hits delete. So what people do in organizations today to get around that is, you know what, I'm going to email Will. I'm going to CC our boss, Ann. I'm going to CC Ann's boss, Ken. You know what, let me just CC the entire organization on my email. Bring a lot of visibility to it. Now, that's what's going to compel and drive Will to do that action that I've asked him to do, because there's a lot of visibility to that on there. Another slide I want to comment about metrics before I jump into the meat of my presentation. A lot of hidden factories. A lot of organizations got lots of data, okay? Does your organization have a lot of data? Do you have business analysts? Do you have someone in finance that runs metrics, runs scorecards, emails it out, nobody looks at it, or puts it on the bulletin board, pins it on the bulletin board in the break room, or perhaps goes over to an area information center where a group works and takes a magnet and puts it on a visibility board? Does that happen in your organization? Let's talk about meetings in your organization. A lot of people view meetings as a paid break. It's not something I want to do, it's something I got to do. People go to meetings expecting them to be bad. People view meetings as, I got my job, I got my 8 hours of work that I got to get done, but then I also have 2 hours of work, of meetings, in addition to. I want to talk to you about later on about, making our metrics matter. We need to come together and we need to talk about our performance. So how do we make meetings not in addition to our business, but an enabler of a business? In other words, let's meet for 45 minutes once a week. Let's talk about our performance. Let's talk about what are the actions, the behaviors, the changes we need to make over the next 7 days. And then teams, right? I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm on a team, high performance teams. Ladies and gentlemen, my view of high performance teams they're not managed by personality. They're not a personality based team. High performance teams are managed by processes, okay? You can go through all the team building things, all the programs, the ropes courses, the trust building exercises, the personality assessments, all right? We can understand all that. But how do we remove the personalities that drive performance? How do we have consistency in our teams? See, I believe teams need to be process-based. We need to have non-negotiable processes around that. And that's a great transition over to what I want to talk about you going forward. I shared with you the 3 Ps of proximity, position, and persuasion. And I will tell you the 3 Ps will get you results. But they're not sustainable. For metrics that matter in your organization, you need to have 4 Non-negotiable processes. 4 non-negotiable processes that will be an enabler of a way of work for you and your team when it comes to metrics. My 4 non-negotiables there. You see, I'm going to talk about the 3 C's, okay? My 3 C's of clarity, of a clear, consistent message about the business. And I'm sorry, but email is not a way to communicate. Email, bulletin boards, scrolling LED signs, company newsletters, company internet pages, those are all advertising, okay? They're one way they rely upon someone to read and respond. And I'm sure you've never had the discussion in the hallway where someone comes up to you and says, hey, did you get that email I sent to you, right? When I talk about communication, I'm talking about getting back to basics, to face, okay? Talking about connectivity, that business acumen you see there. Connecting our employees to the business so they can answer, are you winning, are you losing? Factually with data, okay? Execution, the consistency piece, right? That ties to engagement, employee engagement. Employee engagement is a term that me and my firm are hearing more and more about. We need to have an engaged workforce. How do we move our folks from selective engagement to collective accountability? Okay, and then the communication piece I've talked of earlier, and then that ring around it. You see the behavioral sustainment. How do we focus our people on what we have in common, which is the business? How do we focus them on the business versus focusing on what we have in conflict? See, these non-negotiable processes, these 4, and I'm going to transition in just a minute. I'm going to transition over to the business acumen and talk to you about scorecards and metrics around that. I want to use an analogy here to kind of lay the groundwork of my view of what your metrics need to be, your process, and how do we make them matter. Okay. Many organizations have scorecards. They got fancy charts and graphs, dashboards, but they're simply thermometers. What does a thermometer do? It just tells you the temperature. Scorecards, metrics, it just tells them the temperature. Hey, how are we performing? What I want you to think about when it comes to metrics, scorecards, if they're truly going to matter in your organization, they cannot be simply a thermometer, but they need to be thermostats. Thermostatic in approach. And I shared this, and I've gotten feedback before. Someone actually said, I'm not familiar with what you're showing me. I had one of these in my house growing up, but let me update that for the millennials out there and share with you the Nest now that we all got the wireless ones that we can make adjustments. But what does a thermostat do? It allows us to make adjustments. It's summertime here, right? It's hot out. If we get hot in our house, we go to our thermostat on the wall, or we look on our phone and we see what the temperature is, right? Then we can make adjustments. We can make it cooler, okay? If it's wintertime, hey, we're cold, we can look at the thermostat. Oh, it's 66 degrees in here. I need it to be 70. We can make adjustments. Same goes with your metrics. Your metrics need to be adjustable. What do I mean by that is your corrective actions. Understand, why are we below target? What are the adjustments we need to make to go from red to green on our scorecard? That's how we engage our workforce. When our workforce is engaged and accountable, then the metrics matter. So from a thermostat to from a thermometer to a thermostatic view of metrics, any metric that is red, we need to understand why it's red, and we need to make adjustments. That thermostatic approach to it. Take a look at this scorecard, color-coded. My view is that within 5 to 7 seconds, people should be able to answer the question, are you winning, are you losing? Red or green? You don't see yellow on there. I'm not a fan of yellow because for me, yellow doesn't create a sense of urgency. Organizations that I visit, they'll have yellow on their scorecard. They never ever talk about the yellow. All they ever talk about is the red and the green. I've even seen organizations that got 4 and 5 color scoring, which I think thoroughly confuses people because you have to have a chart that says, what does blue mean? What does orange mean? I just want to know very simply, hey, are we winning? Are we losing? And by the way, red on a scorecard is not bad as long as we're doing something about it. As long as the team understands why they are red on a metric, whether it's quality or cost, and they're doing something about it, I'm okay with that. And in fact, I've got a company out in the Seattle area. They celebrate red on the scorecard. Why? It tells them where they can get better. It drives those continuous improvement discussions on that. Let me share with you just this alliteration around scorecards and metrics for me, and something I hope will resonate with you. Three things that your scorecards, your metrics will do. It will educate. It provides a common business language. It helps you identify for our business, what are our pillars of priority. Go back to that scorecard I showed you at the very beginning, right? The pillars of priority for that HR group was retention, it was compensation, it was employee satisfaction, it was training, it was productivity. Those were the pillars of priority, okay? So from a leadership perspective, what are your pillars of priority going to be for your business, okay? Another key component around the education piece is I firmly believe that when employees come in and they're going through the onboarding process, the orientation, part of that needs to be someone from their new team, the team they're about to join, needs to come in and share with them the metrics on the scorecard. Michelin tire. Employees, new hires used to spend day one learning about rubber, the history of rubber, what a rubber plantation is, what goes into building a tire. To be honest, people didn't really care. What people cared about is, hey, what department am I going to work in, and what does that team do on a daily basis? Michelin, the last 3 hours of the day, of day one of orientation, they show the scorecard. Here's what we do. Here's what we measure. Here's what we talk about. Because what you talk about is what becomes important with your business. Metrics, another thing that they'll do, they will facilitate meaningful meetings, okay? You heard me talk about meetings earlier. Meetings are paid break. Meetings are a waste of time. Our scorecards should be the centerpiece. It should be the focal point of our agenda. It helps us focus on what we have in common. Facilitate those meaningful discussions. You know, if we need to have conversations with our employees, the scorecards can serve as a guide point, a point of reference around what we need to focus on, and then motivate. Scorecards can provide affirmation. Hey, you're doing a great job. Keep doing it, right? Provide recognition. And in a little bit later on in my presentation, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about recognition. A couple key points about motivate, okay? One of the exercises that I do when I work with organizations is I'll pick a word such as leadership, or I'll pick the name of the company, and I'll say, hey, let's take the word leadership, all right? Divide into groups of 3. How many words can you come up with from leadership? Well, people start writing down leadership, his, dear. And about 30 seconds into the exercise, I will go around to each of those groups and I'll give them a number. I'll say, hey, I need you to come up with, in the next 5 minutes, 50 words. I need you to come up with 60 words, 75 words. All of a sudden, you see the dynamics of that group of 3 people change because they're motivated. Now they've got a goal they need to work towards. All right. If our employees have goals, give them something to work towards, it helps motivate them. When they come in Monday morning and they're looking at the performance, how do we do the last 7 days? Hey, we missed on quality, or we missed on productivity. They're motivated. Hey, what did we do wrong, or what do we need to do differently this week to do better? They're motivated. Very powerful around that. So let's talk about how do we build scorecards, okay? You got to come up with those pillars of priority, all right? Some organizations do the SKUDEX, safety, quality, execution, delivery, cost. Other ones you see on there on that slide, people, cost, quality, productivity, safety. What are your pillars of priority? From there, let's say you got your pillars of priority, HR to group. What are your metrics going to be for HR under people, under cost, under quality, productivity, safety? Come up with those pillars of priority, okay? No more than 15 to 20 goals on a scorecard, right? There is a belief, a desire. Hey, we need to measure everything. If we got data, we need to measure. I met with a group at an organization back in February. They had a scorecard. They had 52 metrics on that scorecard. 2-point font. I didn't even realize a font was that small. Guess what I asked them? That same question. Hey, are you winning or losing? It was the longest minute of my life, and frankly, they couldn't answer that question, right? They had all this data, but they weren't sure what the data told them. What are the 15 to 20 metrics under your pillars of priority that are going to help move your business forward, okay? Remember, scorecards go through revisions, all right? Every 90 to 120 days, we need to review that, okay? If you've been green for 90 days, okay, we're not going to be green for the entire year. Change that metric. Go red on that metric. Why? It's going to drive that discussion. How can we get better? All right? Any metric that's red, we got to have a corresponding corrective action plan. And that corresponding action plan, that doesn't come from someone above the team. The team, they're the ones that are closest to it. Have them come up with that corresponding action plan associated with that. And then remember my analogy, the thermometer, thermostat. Your metrics have got to be thermostatic in that it tells you the temperature, but then it makes adjustments around that. So leaders, identify what are our pillars of priority. Then let the team come up with what are the metrics, okay? And 90 days after they've had that first scorecard, let's review it. We may take 25% of those metrics off and replace them. Ask the question, what does that metric tell us? Are we able to impact that metric with a behavioral change or a process change? That's how we start building meaningful metrics that matter in your organization. I told you at the outset I was going to share with you some HR metric examples. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to grab a sip of water, take a look at these. And by the way, if you want these emailed out to you, if you want access to the metric library that my firm has accumulated over 30 years, we've got metrics for quality costs, banking, schools, manufacturing, biotech. Send me my email. You see my email address right there. Let me go to the next screen, some others that you see on there. And here, these are about 15, 16 metrics I think are pretty good metrics for the HR group. But again, you've got to identify what are the metrics that are going to matter for our team and our department. Okay? So let me wrap up the business acumen process. Typically when I do this presentation to an organization, I spend about 8 hours doing it. We spend some time building out some metrics. I've got 55 minutes to do it. So let me wrap up the business acumen. Scorecards, educate, common business language, facilitate meaningful discussions, meaningful meetings, motivate your workforce. Scorecards are active positioning devices. What do I mean by that? Okay, you also see there a passive report. Passive report, that's something where somebody else, finance, quality, someone from corporate, that's putting together a report of here's how you did the last 7 days, not meaningful, no one looks at it, gets emailed out or gets posted on the bulletin board. I'm talking about an active positioning device where the team comes together. They look at how did we perform last 24 hours, last 7 days, last month. Let's talk about how do we perform, what do we need to do differently. Okay, and then every team has the ability to answer the question, are we winning? Are we losing? Okay, I've got client companies today where a member of the leadership team on a Friday afternoon or at the end of the month will stand at the employee time clock and ask the question, hey, tell me, how did you and your team, did you win or lose this week? Okay, 95% of the time people can say, hey, we won. We had 16 metrics on our scorecard, 13 of them are green, 3 are red, but we got corrective action plans. Hey, great job, have a great weekend, okay? A lot of power in asking that question, auditing the process around the metrics and the accountability. So let's go over to execution, my second non-negotiable. First one is business acumen. Every team needs to have a scorecard in place, okay? That scorecard will educate, facilitate, motivate. Non-negotiable number 2, okay, we need to have an execution process. We got to talk about accountability and employee engagement. My definition of accountability, it's not how you feel, it's what you're doing, okay? Why is accountability so difficult in organizations? Why is it something organizations talk about, but they fail to do? Because I don't see a visible, tactical representation of accountability. This is how we make accountability visible, personal, real in organizations right here. This is a tool that I introduced, that I teach into my organizations called an action register. There's a lot of behind the scene things that need to happen to make an action register successful. I'm going to touch upon some of those. If you want to copy this template, hey, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to get you a copy of it. But action. You know, one of the things that people don't mind going to meetings if meetings gets done, right? And if you take nothing away from my time with you, take away this action register, start utilizing it in your meetings. You will have meetings where people are excited about going because things are get done. I believe every meeting needs to have an action register. Every meeting needs to open with an action register review. Every meeting needs to close with a review of the action register, all right? And one of the meeting roles, and I'll touch upon this later on, because I believe there's 4 meeting roles for successful meetings. One of the meeting roles is the action keeper, the person that's going to document, write down what people say they're going to do, all right? And when you're in a meeting, you hear terms such as, I will, someone should, let's do this. Those are action terms. And many times people will say in a meeting, hey, I'll do this, or let's do this. And then as soon as that meeting's over with, they're out in the hallway and they get what I call the drive-bys and the hit and runs, right? Hey, someone will say, hey, did you get that email I sent to you? Or, hey, have you had a chance to do this? Or they get back to their desk and they look at their email and they've gotten 22 emails in the last 45 minutes that need response. And everything about that meeting they forgot about until they come back a week later, and then we're having that Groundhog Day. We're talking about the same thing over again, meeting recreation about it, right? See, I believe we put it on the action register. We talk about it one time. Action, what someone says they're going to do, okay? Let's capture that. I have a rule of 12-month clarity. And I know when we live in this world of text messages and abbreviations, I've got a 17-year-old daughter, okay? Last night I got TTYL, talk to you later. I also get IGTG, I got to go, okay? My rule is 12-month clarity. I don't care if it takes half a page. I want that action to be as specific as possible so we will know 12 months from now exactly what that was about. If we put on the action register, check with IT, 12 months from now, we're not going to have any idea what check with IT was about. But if we put on the action register for our HR department, check with IT about the new laptops, when they will be available, and when can our new hires pick them up, okay? Who's the owner? Seth's the owner. We're not going to put 3 different names. We're not going to put Seth, Linda, John down, because what will happen? It will never get done because the other 2 will think the third person's going to do it. Singular ownership. What's the target date? Some actions, like check with IT about the new laptops, 15 minutes. The target date should be a week later. Other actions, much larger in scope, whether something applies to the strategic plan, writing a new policy or process, maybe 3 months out. But we got to have a target date. Because if we don't have a target date, again, it will never get done. We have nothing to work towards. Then completion date, comments field around that. Because in a moment, this is going to become a performance management tool for us. Well, let's document what people say they're going to do. Okay? People love the concept of accountability and the tool of an action register because not only are they being held accountable, but their teammates are being held accountable and their manager. Their manager's name is now associated with that. This is a screenshot from an action register from Visuant. I mentioned earlier, Visuant, the ability to link corrective actions to underperforming metrics. Once you take a look at it, you see that column actions. You know, what someone says they're going to do, what they need to do, applies to. Comment on the applies to column that you see there, right? It applies to scrap, defects, dollars spent on equipment repairs. What that tells me is those metrics are red. Remember my analogy, thermostatic? Any metric that's red, we've got to have a corresponding action plan. There's that corresponding action plan for that team. Okay? Singular ownership, color-coded. Blue one's been done. We're ready to brief on it. Red one's the due date has come and gone. Yellow one's due in the next 7 days. Commentary point on the red ones. You need to have in your team a renegotiation process. And what do I mean by that? Is that I don't believe we should wait till it goes, we should wait till we come together for our meeting to renegotiate our actions. Our actions need to be renegotiated in advance of that meeting. So we have a crisp meeting and we don't spend 15 minutes going around the table with 6 people renegotiating their action around that, right? Action registers is a very powerful tool to help engage the workforce, help make the metrics matter. Because when the team is responsible for coming up with a corrective action for an underperforming metric, that's when our metrics will start to matter. All right? Couple key points on the action register. I've been touching upon it, really trying to drill that home. Any metric that's red, it's got to have a documented corrective action associated with that. 12-month clarity, I talked to you about it before, okay? Meeting discipline. I just talked about the renegotiation process. What's your process to renegotiate an action? When do I need to come and meet with my leader? Is it 72 hours in advance of the meeting? Is it the day of the meeting? Can I pick the phone up and call you? Can I send an email? Okay? How do we renegotiate those? Because let's be honest, I may say, hey, I can get that done next week, but then things happen. It may have been a train wreck of a week, and everything that we thought we were going to get done has gone to the side, and we've had to go all hands on deck. All right? And then performance management. All right? How is this action tool, the action register, a performance management tool? And if you're taking notes, write this down. The biggest demotivating factor in teams today is the disparity of engagement. What do I mean by that? Think about your team, think about your organization. Do you have your go-to people? The people that when you need something done, you pick the phone up or your call, right? They're getting tired, they're getting frustrated, they're getting burned out. Because look at your team. Let's just say hypothetically, this is my team right here. What is this slide about? Well, it's what I call an engagement analysis. Other people call it accountability analysis. But I've taken my team, snapshot of my team, the past 2 months, okay? I've gone through our team action register, and I've written down how many actions has Frank taken and how many has he completed, okay? I've got my team there. What are some observations that jump out at you as you look at that? Well, let me tell you from my perspective as the leader of this team, who are my high performers? Frank and Gwen and Linda, maybe Adam. When I need something done, where am I going, right? I'm managing by personality. As a leader, I am not doing a good job of engaging everybody on my team. Okay? And by the way, I shared this slide last fall in Los Angeles. I was doing a presentation to an HR group, and I got some feedback that this gentleman said, I could never show a slide like this and have people's names associated with it, right? Because of privacy issues. And frankly, you could show this slide of your team and your people are going to know. Your people are going to know, hey, that's Frank, and I know that's Wendy, and I know that's Patricia, I know that's John, because they work 3 hours a day and then they just disappear, okay? People are not naive. So you can leave the names off if you've got issues related to that, but it's a good snapshot. So I may go to Frank, and by the way, Gwen and Linda, they got too much on their plate, right? They can't get their actions done on time. They're constantly having to renegotiate their actions with that. But I may go to Frank and to Gwen and to Linda and say, hey, look, the next 30 days, I don't want you to volunteer, and I'm not going to ask you to do anything related to our actions on our team, because I'm going to spend some time coaching and working with Wendy and Patricia and John. And those, my top performers there, they're going to say, hallelujah, praise the Lord, finally. Because they're thinking to themselves, I work 8, 9, 10 hours a day. I check email on the weekends. I'm making basically the same amount of money as Wendy and Patricia and John, but they're only working 3 hours a day, okay? And then let's go to Wendy, Patricia, and John. When they see this slide, whether or not their names are attached to it, they've got 2 thoughts going through their mind. Number 1, I need to step up, or number 2, I may need to step out of the organization. I may need to update the resume, okay? And sometimes when we trim the dead branches off the tree, what does that give us? It gives us new growth, right? We may have to. But now I've got the data to have a meaningful dialogue with Frank and give him a good performance review, or have a critical conversation with Wendy and John and say, hey, you're not engaged, you're not participative of the team, and here's the data that shares that with me. I'll never forget my first job in Atlanta, right? I'd been working there. I was straight out of college, and I was trying to give what I thought was a meaningful performance review. And this person wasn't a very good performer, and I didn't have the data to back up my discussion with that person. Had I had this data right here, I could have laid out, here's the data that shows me you're not participative and not a team player. I could spend the next 4 hours kind of going through a lot of more nuances on this data right here, on this action register, this accountability analysis. I'm going to have to move on, but it's a powerful, powerful tool around that. So let's talk about accountability in the execution process, okay? I'm making accountability visible. I'm making it personal. It's not about what you feel. It's about what are you doing to move the business forward, okay? Number 3, thermostat. Any metric that's red, we got to have a corresponding action on our action register that says, yes, we were red on our scorecard on this item, but here's what we're doing about it. Point number 4, I touched on it earlier. Highlight at start. The biggest demotivating factor in your teams today is the disparity of engagement. And I just shared with you a tool, a process, a way to measure what's the level of engagement on our team. If you want metrics to matter in your organization, you've got to have that execution piece, that execution process. And the other thing you've got to have to make your metrics matter is you've got to have a communication. Because I believe if you're going to take the time to measure, we got to take the time to talk about it, okay? Many times we have this scorecard, but we fail to talk about it, communicate about it. Let's talk about performance of how we are actually doing. And what I'm advocating here is I'm advocating that once a week for 30 minutes, perhaps 45 minutes, you and your team come together. And it's not team time. It's not to talk high level, strategic stuff. It's just to talk about the business. How are we performing? Okay? It will help make our metrics matter. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a communication cascade, creating a way of work across the organization. And in a minute, I'm going to jump into what does this look like. But I believe, and I just want to share with you an example of how this works, that organizations need to have a communication cascade. And whether at the top it's the site leadership team, or perhaps that top level, that level 1 is the vice president of human resources and his or her staff, I believe they need to kick off the communication cascade. That whether it's Monday morning at 9 a.m., Tuesday morning at 9:30, whatever, that level 1 needs to meet. And when they meet, they use this meeting agenda right here. It's a non-negotiable meeting agenda. And then when level 2 meets, guess what? They use the exact same agenda. Level 2 meets, let's say, level 1 meets Monday at 9 a.m. Level 2 meets Monday at 11 a.m. Because I may participate in level 1, but I'm a leader of level 2 team. So at 11 we meet. We have that exact same agenda. I can't say, well, you know what? I don't want recognition on my agenda. No, it's non-negotiable. These are what we're talking about. And then level 3, perhaps level 3 meets Monday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 8 a.m. I don't care the schedule, but we got to have a cascade. So let's very quickly, let's go through this agenda. All right. Why do we have these topics on there? This is about the business. This is about making the metrics matter. We've got a platform, a forum to talk about performance. The very first thing we're going to do when we open up our meeting is the action register review. Remember I showed you earlier that action register, the blue ones? We're just going to go through the blue ones. Hey, we have this action. Seth, you were going to check with IT about the new laptops, when they were going to be available and when we could schedule our employees to go to the IT group and get them. What they say? Hey, I talked with Paul. Paul said that our employees can begin coming in Monday afternoon to pick up their new laptops, get logged in, signed on to the network. Done. Any questions? We're done. So all we're doing is just going through the actions that are due that have been completed. We're not going to go around the table and get status updates on everybody else's action. The next time we should talk about those actions is when they're blue, on the target date, when they've been completed. Scorecard review. Okay? Our scorecard now becomes visually projected. We're looking at it. It may be all green. Hey, great job, everybody. Or it may be red. And each metric has got an owner assigned to it. That owner has investigated in advance of the meeting. Why is the metric red? What's the recommended corresponding action plan? What should we do about it? Okay? Let's focus on what we have in common. The business, the scorecard helps us focus. Okay? What we talk about is what becomes important. Next on there, you see around the table. What's around the table? It's the engagement piece. Literally, I'd like for you to go around the table and have your employees ask a question. I mean, not have a question, ask a question, but this is the ability for them, if they have an issue or question, they can raise it. Okay? A couple key points on around the table. Number 1, people need to be prepared. And what do I mean by that is they need to have 45 to 60 seconds to articulate what is the issue they want to talk about. What's the issue they want to talk about? Okay? They can raise an issue. Perhaps there's a discussion collectively as a team for 2 or 3 minutes. But the facilitator of the meeting needs to say, what's the action here? Meaning, what do we need to do about this? What I don't want to happen, and this is where most meetings get off the train track right here. where the meeting gets derailed is when we've got 2 people out of 10 spending an inordinate amount of time trying to solve an issue, and you've got the other 8 people looking at their phones, counting ceiling tiles, saying, what are we going to do? Why are we doing this? What's for lunch, right? What's the action here? Perhaps that action is very simple. It's John and Linda need to meet, have a cup of coffee to talk about it, right? But it's the engagement piece. What's the action here? Before I go over to recognition, I owe you the 4 meeting rules. Okay, I mentioned them earlier. Meeting rule number 1, the facilitator. And these meeting rules need to be decided in advance of the meeting. We're not going to come into the meeting and asking who wants to be the facilitator, because let's be honest, nobody's going to volunteer. Who's the facilitator? Needs to be assigned in advance for 30 days. Who's the action keeper? That's meeting rule number 2. Who's the person that's going to capture the actions on the action register? Remember, I will, someone should. Let's do this, action terms. What's rule number 3? The pass down person. I'm going to get to that in just a second. What's meeting rule number 4? Participant. Prepared participant. They're prepared. They've looked at the scorecard. They've looked at the actions. They are prepared to come into this meeting and contribute and to be an active participant. Okay, going back to my agenda here, recognition. Why do I put recognition on this meeting agenda? Because what I see in many organizations is, go back to my example about Sarah, the leader, right? Leaders are quick to go out and provide feedback when what? When things aren't good. All right? Let's provide recognition when things are good. When things are great, when people go above and beyond. Okay? It needs to be a mental trigger. And it may have been a train wreck of a week and we're not going to recognize anybody. I'm okay with that. Okay? But let's have recognition. Perhaps we say, you know what? I want to recognize Ann. As many of you know, the servers went down Friday afternoon. The power went out. The servers went down. Ann was here till Friday night at 8 p.m. getting our servers back up and running so that when we came into work on Monday, we didn't miss a beat. Thank you very much, Ann. Very simple. Recognition. People are just looking for the intangible, the informal, doesn't cost you anything. They don't need another t-shirt, another coffee mug. It's the handshake. It's the pat on the back. Hey, great job. Thanks for your hard work. Pass up, pass down. What is pass up, pass down? This is a meeting role. And let me go back to and share with you a real meeting that I attended back in January. This meeting was of a pharmaceutical company. Here were the 3 pass down items as that meeting was taking place for 45 minutes. The director of HR said this: hey, if anybody wants to make a change to their 401k plan, please see your HR representative by the end of the month. Pass down item number 1. Pass down item number 2 came from the director of HR for the group. He said, hey, we are upgrading the servers over the weekend. If you come to work on Monday, you can't log on to the network. Do not call the help desk. Just restart your machine. Pass down item number 3 came from the quality group. We have got an audit coming up. It's the week of February 4th. Those are the 3 pass down items. So guess what happens at level 3? When we get to the pass down, those three things are shared. You may be saying, well, why can't we just email that out? Because people don't read every email they get, okay? People don't read every email they get. But people in your organization will be conditioned to know that if it is a pass down item, it is critical to the business. I've got companies, employees, if they miss a meeting, one of the first things they do is they log in to look at what was the pass down items for the week, or they will ask a colleague, hey, tell me the pass down items for the week, because they know it's critical. What's pass up? Go back to my example about that audit. People working on shift number 2. Will shift number 2, will the auditors be on shift number 2? We're going to pass that question up. 2-way cascading conduit, sharing of information, top down, bottom up. This is how we drive true communication in an organization. This is how we eliminate the rumor mill, the grapevine, okay? Earlier this year, I got a phone call from a gentleman. His company, I just started doing some work with his company. He said, Seth, there are people in suits walking around our building. Are we for sale? I had no idea. And it turns out, first, for 24 hours, there was a lot of angst and anxiety, but it turns out sales and marketing was touring a new customer, okay? But there was a lot of angst and anxiety about the company was for sale, the company was going to be merging, okay? A simple pass-down item would have solved that issue. Let me, I'm starting to run out of time. Let me transition over to action register number 2. Why are we looking at the action register a second time? Because during that meeting, we had 5 actions. 5 people said they were going to do things. We got to capture. Let's go through the action register, okay? Bo, you said you were going to do this. Can you have it done by next Wednesday? Yes. Lisa, you said you were going to check with engineering about the new specifications for the new products. Can you do that by next Friday? Yes. Get that verbal affirmation. Make sure people understand. Remove ignorance as an excuse. Because this action register, it either needs to be posted in a central location on your server where people can see it so they can see the action register. And then finally, the meeting audit. Okay? Where do we typically talk about how bad, how ineffective a meeting is? We talk about it at the end of the meeting. We don't talk about it at the end of the meeting. We talk about it outside of the meeting. We talk about it in the hallway. We talk about it in the break room. We talk about it at the water cooler. That's where we talk how bad. That meeting was painful. Nothing good happened. Why do we continue to meet? See, I believe if we're going to take the time, spend the money to meet, we got to talk about, is our meeting effective? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Did this meeting move the business forward? One of the things my firm does, we will audit meetings in teams. Companies spend a lot of money having people attend a meeting. Is it an effective meeting? Is it meaningful? Let me share with you 3 things that I've seen happen in the last year with companies that implemented the meeting audit. One company, after 4 weeks of the continuous feedback of saying people are showing up late, they're coming to the meeting, they're being disruptive, that company decided that at the start of the meeting time, the conference room door was locked. So let me tell you, after John missed the meeting because he was 3 minutes late, guess what happened the next week? John showed up 5 minutes early. Behavioral change. Another company said this: we have too many people on their cell phones, not focused, not paying attention. So guess what they said? No cell phones allowed in the meeting. You would have thought people were being asked to give up their firstborn child, okay? People were upset about this. What if my people call me? What if my spouse calls me? What if my kid's school calls me? What if that happens? Well, what was decided was, at the receptionist desk is a stack of Post-it notes. Put on your phone if these people call me or text me, come get me. Guess what? For 45 minutes, people weren't getting phone calls. They weren't getting text messages. They weren't that important. But their meetings were much more effective because they had a process in place that says no cell phones. People were much more focused. The final one I want to share with you, it's one of my favorite ones, is this is an organization that had a beautiful conference room, nice leather chairs, plush leather chairs. Their meetings time was Mondays at 1:30. People would come together. It's a Monday. It's right after lunch. Well, several people, believe it or not, in this meeting were falling asleep sitting in these nice chairs. The decision was made that we were no longer sitting in chairs. We were going to stand up around the conference room table. They changed their meeting name to their huddle now. They have their weekly huddle at 1:30. But the key is they talked about, why was the meeting ineffective? Hey, people are falling asleep. People are getting too comfortable. They changed it. So the meeting, what's the purpose of the meeting? And you may say, you know what? We already have 10 hours, 12 hours worth of meetings. What I've seen is that if you've got a safety meeting, because you're measuring safety on your scorecard, it goes away. If you've got a budget meeting, if you've got budget costs on your scorecard, that meeting will go away. It's about how do we reduce time spent in meetings. This meeting I just shared with you, 30, 45 minutes, I promise you implement this meeting process, you will start to see meetings go reduction in that. I share with you advertising, emails, bulletin boards, scrolling LED sign, company newsletters, company internet pages. Someone's got to read it. I'm talking about back to basics, face-to-face communication. Talk about the business. We're reducing the time we spend in the meetings. Leaders no more than 6 hours a meeting. Cascading can do it. Remember that pass up, pass down I shared with you. Okay, and then the meetings, we're shifting the focus. It's not in addition to the business. It's an enabler of the business. It helps us see what we got to do differently. Okay. Running out of time here. Fourth non-negotiable. Non-negotiable number 1, business scorecard. Every team's got to have metrics that matter. Number 2, the execution, the accountability, the action. Number 3, we got to talk about it. Number 4, that behavioral sustainment piece. If you're taking notes, write down these 3 questions. What does the leader expect of the team? What does the team expect of the leader? And then team member to team member, what do you expect of each other, okay? Those questions help us perform and provide the behavioral expectations necessary for an effective teams, okay? It helps us become a process-based team, not governed by personality, but governed by process. All right, I could spend more time discussing this and sharing with you, but I believe every team's got to have behavioral expectations in place. So let me wrap up. HR. If your metrics don't matter today, if you can't answer that question, are you winning or losing? It's simply transactional for you. I'm talking about how do we elevate the role, the function, the view of HR? How do we help them become more transformational? How do we help make metrics matter? It's by engaging our workforce, engaging our team. What are the pillars of priority? What's going to help us be strategic in how we go about the business around that? How do we have teams that are function? How do we as leaders manage by process, not by personality around that? Okay, we got to run the business systems, a way of work. I've shared with you 4 non-negotiables that become your way of work. This is how we make our metrics matter. Go back to that slide number 2. If I gave you that scorecard, those metrics, and said these are great HR metrics, go utilize them, it would have been a waste of my time and a waste of your time. Because you would have, 1, those metrics wouldn't have mattered to you, but 2, you wouldn't have had the systems and processes behind to make the metrics matter, to talk about them, to have the engagement, the accountability. Remember my thermostatic view of your metrics, okay? And then what's your leadership legacy? When you leave your group, you get elevated to a new role. Will it be the 3 Ps of proximity, position, and persuasion, where when you leave on a Friday and your team comes in on Monday, they are in chaos because they don't have that 3P leader anymore? Have that 3C leader, that leader of clarity, connectivity, and consistency driving your organization, all right? And then, paramount for me is, can your people answer this question? Are you winning? Are you losing? Are we winning? Are we losing? Engage your workforce. Let people know, hey, we've got to connect our people to the business around that. I'm out of time here. I really appreciate you choosing my session on HR metrics. I hope I gave you some tactical, tangible things that you can utilize to make metrics matter. A couple offers I have to you. If you want a white paper, guide to scorecard fundamentals, how do you build meaningful metrics in your organization, send me an email. You see my email address there. If you want those HR metric examples I showed you earlier, I've got many more behind that I can share. Also, as I said earlier, my firm, we've got a metric library we've accumulated over 30 years. If you want different metrics for quality, cost, productivity, safety, different business, if you're in banking, if you're manufacturing, customer service, we've got all kinds of metrics that I can share with you. So I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful conference. I hope it's meaningful and rich and you learn a lot. Have a wonderful day.